Welcome to Five Things Friday. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, and we're adding some help here to the Five Things on Friday with Nate Bauer. Nate, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be talking about five things on a Friday. That's a special guest spot for me. So I'm happy to lend a hand here. So
I the only way I know is to be like awkwardly honest and painfully transparent. Like I have a tick. Like I can't lie very well. And today we are not live. Today is not live. So I just have to rip that Band-Aid off, Nate. Because we have people that show up and we have people that watch the show and they want to interact, and I just don't want to disappoint them. That's really what it's about. So, it's Ohio State week. This is the day before the game. We should be live, but, I don't want to be cliche, but there are certain things that come before sports, and I have an important engagement tomorrow. I need to be there for Zoe. She's got something going on, and I just the schedule didn't work. So I couldn't be live here on the show today to do what we normally do, and that's why I want to thank Nate for stepping in and helping me. We're going to record. It's going to be the same show. We're going to do an awesome job giving you five things to watch coming up for the game. But if you're here in the chat, I just wanted to say I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Please enjoy the show, but we won't have the same level of interaction. I might be in the chat right now talking to you, but we're not having it here like we normally do, which is why Nate is here, because I need someone to talk to. I can't just shout into an empty void. So, Nate, have you seen the five things before? Do you know how this works?
I feel like I have a little bit of an idea. I feel like I have seen the show, and I'm looking for. To be honest with you, just given the precursor that you gave me before we came on here, five things about Penn State's offense particularly excites me, because I've been following this team very closely, obviously all year. And still have some questions myself about what Penn State is and what Penn State wants to be offensively, particularly against good teams. So Ohio State is obviously I'll call it the first chance, right? The Illinois defense has some talent there up front. Iowa's defense obviously presents some challenges, but obviously we have seen how the season has played out thus far for Penn State offensively. They really haven't had to do anything extraordinary to beat the teams that they've been up against. So we'll see what you got in store for us today.
Yeah, and I think that you set that up perfectly. Penn State against those teams, they were dominant because their defense did a lot of the legwork. They're not going to be as dominant in those games as we expect as this upcoming week. So this is to set all of this up. What we're talking about today is these are five things that are going to keep Penn State on schedule. These are the things that I'm looking at for the offense to have success, so they can play a balanced game, not get stuck in the mud, not have 3 and outs, and they can play that all-important complementary football with their defense, who you don't want to put out there, if they get off to a slow start and they're put under the gun early. This is how Penn State can avoid some of those things and be methodical on offense, because the explosive plays, with this defense, I don't think they're going to be the opportunities like there were last week to push the ball down the field against Ohio State. The way their defense is structured, it's designed to take that away in the run and in the pass. So you have to be efficient, and that is what Penn State and James Franklin has talked about, is they've learned to do hard things well. It is harder to be methodical, to be correct and play well and not lose 10 times in a row to get points, as opposed to get 6 plays, then get an explosive play, get in the red zone, get a field goal or a touchdown. So that's what we're looking at today. And that's why we're not going to be focusing on the explosive plays, because as James Franklin, we talked about this week in particular, the idea that you don't have to be a perfect team. Penn State does not have to be methodical and hit the explosive shots and play perfect defense in order to win. It'd be great. They'd blow out Ohio State, but we're not expecting that. This is the reality. This is where the rubber meets the road of reality, and that's what we're getting into today. You got it.
So should we start? Are we ready to get into the five things and your point number 5 as what are most important for Penn State this weekend offensively?
Yes.
Number 5.
So number 5 starts with the Ohio State defense, and watching the way they play, there's a couple of different ways that you can play the run game and different facets within the run game. I broke this down over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, T. Frank's film room from Wednesday. The way they use their safeties to augment their run game, I think, is really interesting, and it's because it's different than what a lot of teams do. So, for example, when you play a zone scheme, a lot of times what teams will do is they'll take their tight end from the front side, make it look like you're going to run man, and then shift him to the backside and kick out block on the unblocked defender. If a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense, again, a reason to join BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I give you the diagrams in T. Frank's film room. But the way Ohio State has played that in some pretty important games, they have used their safety as a man coverage tracker instead of using their linebackers to shift gaps. So a lot of teams will shift gaps when that tight end flows to the backside. It's called a split block. And you have to adjust to the new blocks on the backside unless, like Ohio State with their safety in the middle, they just use that guy to track the tight end. And to me, this is a way that Penn State can manually manipulate the safety because if you know the rules of the defense, you can break the defense with those rules. So number 5 to me is like, where is the safety on the play, and does Penn State try to move that guy intentionally to then attack a part of the Ohio State defense? I'm going to be watching that matchup specifically out of the gate from the Penn State offense and their run game, because that could generate some good chunk plays for Penn State.
James Franklin was asked specifically about the 3 safety system that that Ohio State runs. Do you foresee how unusual is it? Right? Like, where does it fall on the scale of how much Penn State would have had to prepare for it to feel as natural and instinctive as maybe you would want them to play in this type of a game?
That's a great question. I think it's on the order of magnitude and challenge. I think there are certain things. Illinois' defense, I think, fundamentally presents a harder challenge for Penn State because of the way they played their defensive tackles, the way they stuffed the middle of the defense and played with that kind of 5-down bear front 86 Bears defense where they had so many guys on the line of scrimmage. I think that presents, especially if you've got a decent coverage unit on the back end, that presents a bigger challenge than having a guy play deep, because the way that this, and Jaywan Sider explained this great, you can do this a couple of different ways. So they're going to get the same thing they've gotten previously from teams that used a quarters look or a cover 4, where they put a safety over the middle of the defense behind the linebacker to allow him to attack the run game from an advantageous angle. And kind of the way you account for that guy in the run game, you have to bring somebody in, I think, from the slot or elsewhere to attack that guy. You see this in the NFL a lot. You'll see slot receivers and tight ends crashing down on guys in the second level that way because it's hard to account with that guy on the offensive line. And I feel like I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but basically it's like a free defender that you can't account for in the run game when they line up 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage in the middle. There's just not an offensive lineman in the blocking scheme that's climbing 10 yards to go get that guy. So can you move him with your tight ends, with your slot receiver, whoever it may be that guy has in coverage? Because what I've seen, the tendencies of the Ohio State defense is they play that guy in a man look in the run game to try and I'm going to take a step back here. A lot of college running backs, this is built on tendencies. A lot of college running backs don't actually hit the front side of a run where you're intending to go. You have defensive tackles that take away that side, and then everyone immediately cuts to the backside. So they're gambling that if we bring that guy down and follow the tight end, it's going to take him to the run as much as it's going to take him to the backside of the play. So they're gambling that you're going to cut back into that free defender, and it's going to be a tackle for a short gain. Katron Allen is a good running back. He will hit the front side of runs when they're there. He has an extra level of awareness. So I think that's going to be playing into how this matchup is determined and trying to move that guy so he doesn't get a free run at the running back like they've had against Iowa, Northwestern, Delaware, and sometimes West Virginia. Like, this has been the constant theme that we haven't really talked about in terms of why Penn State hasn't gotten these chunk plays in the run game.
Gotcha. All right. The running backs aren't the only ones that have to play well. However, on Saturday, you've got some thoughts on the receivers as well.
Absolutely.
Number 4.
To me, this is the game. You've got your you got your dynamic duo. You got your two best buddies on the outside, Trey Wallace, Keandre Lambert-Smith. It's time that you play like it. Both of these guys have to have good games because they have holes in what they do, Nate. And I think that we know most of what those holes are. This is the game where you have to play above yourself. You play within yourself, but play above the tendencies that we've seen before. And for both of those guys, I think that they're pretty clear and they have defined roles within this offense. So it's as simple as execute, but it's also as difficult as execute where you haven't so far this season.
And where is that? Where have they not executed thus far this season?
Yeah, so I'm going to actually start with Trey Wallace because he's been the missing link, and I think that's what he brings to the table maybe is less obvious because we haven't seen it as much. So this is the first time he's playing against a Big Ten opponent. Like the splits of him being on the field and off the field are apparent, but they're also coinciding with, again, West Virginia, Delaware, and UMass versus a stretch of Big Ten games where Penn State had to play without him. So be the impact player, and that means catch the ball, run away from man coverage when you get it, and be the safety valve in off coverage, catching those Drew Aller specials, which is if they give you off coverage and you're running that comeback route, you're snapping the stem off, coming back downfield, and getting 6 to 7 yards, catch the football. And if you make something with it, great, but catch the football. Be on time. Be like a really dependable train. Like you just be at the station on time and catch the football. And for him, drops have been one of the issues for him. Even I see it in practice too, like some of those concentration drops. He's their most dynamic football player, but reliability for him is going to be the biggest thing for me because those dynamic plays will happen if they happen. We saw him run away from coverage, yards after the catch. Those are all really important for him, but it's the mundane he's got to master in this particular game.
Keandre, how about him?
Be the dude. There have been times I have been critical of him for not having enough grit, not being physical, not playing through the adversity, allowing the adversity to affect your presence on the field. There were some times against Illinois, I was downright offended by some of the routes he ran and some of the effort he gave in those situations. Not as a Penn State football fan or anything, but just as as somebody who loves football. And I think fans, players, everybody approaches this thing with a lot of passion. And I think he does. But this has been the whole thing about him, right, Nate? Is what's the thing? Is like, can you get his mental right on every single game and every single play? And this is the game. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. You've got to be the steady force that absorbs catches in this offense and makes plays. So play with tenacity. Play your best version of yourself in this game.
Yeah, taking himself out of the game with frustration over something that doesn't go his way, because it's not going to go his way all the time, right? I mean, that's what you're going to have against an opponent of this quality, is that they will be intentional about making life difficult for the top receiver that Penn State has, and really the only consistent receiver that Penn State has. Obviously, it's not Trey's fault that he hasn't been around, but Keandre is really the only consistent option that Penn State has had, and so Ohio State rightfully is going to try to make life very difficult on him on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and part of the conversation with this particular team, and something that I probably have not said well enough this week in the various places, is they play man coverage. It's not like they're only playing with this hybrid defense. They're not only playing zone. They also do play man. A lot of it is off, but you can vary the depth of your man coverage based on the opponent, formation, etc. And if I'm Ohio State, I'm getting in his face. I'm going to take one of my corners, and I'm going to press him and play off everywhere else. So you can have a little bit of both in these situations. So he's going to see the number one thing, like in the scouting report on Keandre Lambert-Smith, is get hands on him. So it's not just, maybe you don't get targeted. It's also play through the contact, fight through it, and if you get flagged, you get flagged. In terms of if you get the pass interference, do your best to make it irrelevant. And I think that that's been an area where we've seen him expect to get the flag. And you just can't assume that's going to happen, because this could be a game that the refs, the particular refs you get this day, they allow more contact. And in college, by the way, they allow a lot of contact anyway. So I think this is just unbelievably critical for him and for Penn State, the health of this offense, to be cohesive and to be on schedule, which again is what we're talking about here. if you've got a slant, you got to get separation. You've got to get across that guy's face. There's no excuse in this game anymore. And I think that those are the areas where he can take another step in this game. And this is a name-making game, right, Nate? Like, you play well in this game. We're talking about Keandre Lambert-Smith much more as a draft pick than we have been so far, which I think that's entirely his goal this year, is to make a name for himself as a guy that can be an offensive leader. He's shown it at times. He's shown the ability to do it. Be one of the people we talk about after this game.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned physicality. I think that's your next point in the running game.
Yes. Before we get to that, though, I have to say, as we always do, join BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. If you're having a good time, I reference T. Frank's Film Room, some of the analysis. I just sometimes can't help myself. I'm an oversharer at times. So I'll just randomly blurt out things on the message board of I'm watching film and I need to tell somebody. Like, oh my gosh, I need to tell somebody. That's something I'll provide to you at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, giving you the insights watching Ohio State versus Notre Dame and some of the things I noticed that Penn State could take advantage of. Maybe some of the things Penn State, Purdue, some of those things. We've talked about a little bit of it here. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. For me, that's what I provide you. Nate, what do you provide people over at the site?
First of all, charm and personality is number one. No, but look, this is a Penn State football program that I've been covering closely for this is year 19 now. So I've gotten to know some people over that time, and that has been helpful in providing insights to what is going on behind the scenes within the Penn State football program. Take a lot of pride in it.
And excellent. I don't know there's anybody better, especially when you factor in Nate's ability to cover basketball too. And coming up here on Monday, I think you're going to start pulling double duty with basketball starting up and having to have a foot in both realms. I know. It's your stretch run until we get to the end of football season.
Yep, the grind is arriving. Penn State basketball media day is on Monday, so certainly stay tuned here if you are a Penn State basketball fan. The YouTube channel and our podcast outlet will have stuff. We'll be getting back into the Hoops podcast, so really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and we have a new video player over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, so we can put stuff that is exclusive content over on the site. And basketball is an exclusive content sort of area, so if you want to be a part of the basketball conversation, another great reason to sign up. I hope we're providing. I'm jacked up, Nate. I love talking about football. This is a good football team versus a good football team. Hopefully, even though we're not live here, I'm providing you the energy that I normally do on a Friday. Nate's doing an awesome job asking questions, being here as my assist man. I want to thank you again for that. Let's get to number 3.
Number 3.
I messed up our flow with the promo, so I hit the 3 on my own there.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I should have known one was coming. What do you got? What's important on the ground game specifically for Penn State's two top running backs, Singleton and Katron Allen?
Yep. Yeah. So like we said all week long, and this has been my kind of big thing, is I think Penn State will try to hit some shots, right? They're not going to go into the game thinking they've got a dink and dunk. I do believe that the point of the offense isn't to be efficient, but is to be complete. But if they land it efficient, that's where you need to be in this game, because that is what the defense is going to give you. But in the run game specifically, we're done talking about the explosive plays for this week. And I think just in general, we've beaten that horse, and it's time to be done.
Yep.
Jay One-Sider called them dirty runs, which is these two running backs are averaging 2.88 yards after contact for Katron Allen and 2.91 for Nick Singleton. Your dirty run's got to be extra dirty in this game, because you're going to get one-on-ones with a safety, and Nick Singleton talked about it earlier this week. He wants to run over a dude and let him know he's here. He's here all game. You might break one, and then there's two more safeties in the middle of the field. Like, you're going to get 10 yards maybe, and that is the trade-off of this defense. If they're front 6, and I mean 6 because 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, if they're not on and they're not in their gap, there are seams that can develop. So we'll get to that in just a little bit, but the running back's job to me in this game is to make a 3-yard run a 5-yard run. And this is the core of this game. Stay on schedule. This is the best, I think, overall from talent, scheme, everything, the best front 7 they've seen this year. Iowa's very good, but they weren't backed up by an offense like this. And I don't know that they had the overall depth of talent. There's some NFL guys on the defensive line for Ohio State, especially at the tackle position. They might not be peak players yet, but they are very talented. So when you get the opportunity to get those extra yards, Katron Allen did a great job last week of just being a tank. You don't have to be dragging guys 16 yards, but you do have to maximize every single run. So we're not focusing on Nick Singleton breaking 60 on this game. If it happens, that's excellent. But Nick did a great job at the end of the UMass game of finding that balance of, okay, this run is going to get this many yards, and I'm going to get all of those yards. And that's what you need from him. And Katron breaking tackles, being the dude that bounces off with one leg, spins out, and gets 6 more. Just like, that's it. That's it.
Yep.
Be that guy in this game.
Do you see Penn State, to what extent, I should say, do you see Penn State trying to work the perimeter with their running backs in this game?
Yeah, I think that's you're skipping ahead in
Oh, no.
You've anticipated. No, it's perfect. I love great questions. Yes, I think that's going to be a part of what they try to do. I do expect, I don't want to say wrinkles in this game, but I do expect a very specific thing tailored to this defense of how they want to attack. Because it is a light box, and the opportunity, that's the point, that's kind of the gambit here, is they're daring you to run knowing they're adding an extra defender on every play. So you've got to make them pay for that gamble of not having a linebacker on the field. Even in defenses that you utilize space and some hybrid safety linebacker guys, those guys are in the slot. So they always have, like, they got an eye on the box. The run's over here. They're always here, but they're looking over here. You got a safety, and it just looks like there's all this space. You've got to take all of that space. That's exactly what we're talking about here, is take all that space to the safety, and then come what may.
Cool. Great.
Yeah.
What do you got for number 2? Obviously, Penn State.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
You're so excited. You're so excited. Penn State has a pretty key return coming back on the offensive line this week.
Number 2.
So I wouldn't say JB Nelson has been elite, and like it's not like they're getting back Quentin Nelson or anything, like the best guard that we've seen. But I think Fitz hit the nail on the head in terms of what he brings to the table on yesterday's show on Thursday. He is their most explosive, powerful, nasty dude. And we mentioned Ohio State has NFL-level guys at defensive tackle in a couple of different ways. Number 51, he's an excellent explosive 3 technique. Good size, but he's a speed player. You're going to have to contend with that. But in terms of Ty Hamilton, number 58, he's got elite length. He's going to be an NFL nose tackle in the future. And then Tyleik Williams is a bit of a blend of those two guys. He's, I think, their best overall player from a technique standpoint. I don't know that he is as explosive or as strong as the other two. He's a little bit of he's a big dude, but he's not overpoweringly strong. I think you can beat him, but he's a very smart football player. He's aware, and he can make plays. JB Nelson can put dudes on the ground. So getting a couple of those blocks and that combination of JB Nelson and Hunter Norzad was cooking, even against Illinois, who I thought, had a really, really good defensive line. They were creating some seams against that defense. Now, John Newton blew up some of those plays, and I think part of it was that was the scheme of, hey, we're going to give you the bubble here. Definitely run towards 15. Please, run towards 15. And they took the cheese, but they also created some big seams on the interior. I think Penn State can do that, and like I said, make Ohio State pay for the fact that they've got 2 linebackers and a safety hanging out in the McDonald's parking lot and not near the line of scrimmage. You do that by beating guys in the gap, and JB Nelson, I don't think he's playing light years better than Vega, but he does give you, believe it or not, more explosiveness than Vega gives you, who is more of a grinding, powerful figure. So they need some of that snap off the ball. Hunter Norzad, JB Nelson, they provide that in this game, which could be a difference-making element on the interior.
I was going to ask do you see plans changing based on JB's availability? I mean, let's say he's limited in some respect, and Vega has to take the bulk of those snaps. Do you see Penn State's approach? Is it that different, or can they approximate each other?
I think they can approximate each other. I think that there's good enough balance between the talent that even though JB does provide you those things, he's still making mental mistakes. He's still making physical mistakes and finishing blocks. That's, again, something that we've seen from him. Like, starts out really good, and then he just kind of falls off at the end. So we're not talking about a polished prospect, but if we're talking about volume of yards created on the interior, he gives you a higher cap for that. So run your stuff, don't change anything, but you are hopeful and would expect 4 or 5 plays a game maybe that he's going to make a difference-making block where you watch it week 1, he put dudes on the ground, and then later his ability to create seams, he just needs to hold on to those things. And that's one of the things when we're at practice, that's one of the things I see so much is that Phil Troutwine is drilling him specifically about the little details because JB has it. He's got the skills. It's just about making sure he is a complete football player, and that's, I think, one of the areas where they've been focusing so much in this game, in this season, is getting him to a higher level of consistency because he provides you just an amazing opportunity to have the offensive line that Penn State fans want, which is, again, knocking fools to the ground. JB can provide that for you as long as he is maintaining his technique and fundamentals. And I said, maybe it's just because he's on the left and like the way it's set up, we see left to right and they are all parallel to us. And we can't see the guys on the right side, but I don't see him working a whole lot with Sal and Caden and Olu. Like it's very much, let's dial JB in and then this thing can be dangerous up front.
Interesting. Well, older guys too, right?
Yep.
Last one. We're running out. This is the top point for you.
Yeah, here we go. This, I think, is what's going to set up a lot of this game.
Number 1.
We talk about this. I'm always proud when we talk about like football on the beat. Just in general, the ecosystem of Penn State football conversation. We talk about things that matter and talking about 11 personnel versus 12 personnel versus a 3 safety system. This is a huge matchup in this game, and getting Trey Wallace going all the way back to number 4, getting Trey Wallace back unlocks the versatility of this offense to seamlessly go from 11 to 12 personnel. What do you major in this game? What causes Ohio State the most problem, and what can you do to create that space that we're talking about up front, aside from the offensive line and the running backs? Those are 2 ways to create space. The last thing is formation, personnel, and game plan, like the game plan side of things. And I think 11 to 12, that's going to dictate how Penn State wants to attack and different things that they're going to do in this game.
What do you got? If you're Mike Yurcich this week, how are you dialing this up, and what do you see as Penn State going to more often than not?
So this is where I'm going to go out off script, and I'm going to say, and this is just generally how I feel about watching offense. Penn State's tight ends are good at run blocking, but they're not, like the offensive line, they're not elite. They have their weaknesses. There's no Bretton Strange out there this year. Tyler Warren, in specific situations, can do a really good job of driving guys off the ball, but nobody's digging out defensive ends. Nobody is even playing to a level 0, right, of like you did your job instead of you moved that guy off the ball. They're not consistently generating that against Big Ten teams. So I'm going 11. I'm creating space, and that is why Trey Wallace is so big, is in this game, and I've looked at some of the film and why I brought up over at T. Frank's film room what Purdue did is that created space where there's already space. And if you put 11 personnel out there and you are able to throw and run effectively, that puts Ohio State in conflict of do they need to put their slot corner on the field now and take one of those safeties off? So you're not creating that problem. You're playing into their hands if you play 12, in my opinion, because you're allowing them to play the defense they want to play. And just generally, when you make these formations bigger, and this is one of my biggest complaints about the running game when you condense Keandre Lambert-Smith or Trey Wallace down in, and you play these big formations, and then you try to bounce to the outside, or that's kind of what you're hoping is you get a seam in the middle, but really you're aiming towards, the tight ends and the receivers. It creates more chaos for the defense than it does for you. And I've seen more tackles for a loss. I've seen more negative plays because of guys put in position where it's not their strong suit to be down in there mixing it up. Even Liam Clifford, who I think, does the little things. How do I say this without going into the cliches of like, the dude is bigger, first off. He's over 200 pounds. He's physical, but he's not a run blocker. So I think spread to run is the option here. And that goes again, this 11 and 12 ties in everything we've just talked about from the beginning of safety manipulation. Can you get the safety out of position? And now there's a big seam for you to run through. Do you have that guy moved off the spot and now it's a linebacker, maybe Steele Chambers, who is their weakest defender? I think that's pretty fair to say their weakest defender overall. Maybe you've got Katron Allen versus that guy in the hole with no safety over top, and you might get an explosive play, or at least you're getting, a big chunk of yardage. Maybe you're getting 20 yards, if not 40 or 60 or whatever, but you are making a material difference in the run game because you have eliminated the opportunity for somebody to just fly in over the top because they're an extra defender, because you've brought more guys into the box as well. So for me, I'm looking for them to create space in this game. And in the run game, I think that bodes well for Singleton and Allen, but especially Katron Allen. You give him some space and some options, and he's going to create for you. I think his creative running style and his slipperiness, this is going to be something that's really important for Penn State's rushing attack.
So if I'm going through the 5 points that you just made and pulling it all together, right? The running game is huge for Penn State this week.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Right.
And that's what you're overcoming. That's what you're trying to overcome, is that matchup on the interior. We haven't really talked about Sawyer and Tuli Moloau, because I think those guys and the tackles are more defined players. They're more defined matchups. Olu's going to do a good job. I don't know that he's going to dominate. He's never been a dominator in the run game. He's gotten better, but he's going to contend with Sawyer and with Tui Moloau fine. I would say, like, in Caden Wallace, he's powerful, he's strong. Maybe he doesn't create a ton of extra yardage, but the wild card to me is the interior. Those 3 guys in the middle, especially the left side, I think you have the opportunity to create some of that consistent chunking in the run game, but it could also go the other way. Like, that is the area where things could get dynamically different. And then how the rest of the defense plays off of the offensive line and the running backs, because that takes all the pressure off Drew Aller, where he can just operate free and loose of, I need to take what the defense gives me. You're not in 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 7. You're not asking him to be Superman in these situations, which, by the way, I think he can do. Like, I'm actually not concerned necessarily about him being clutch, because we've seen it on 3rd down. 4th and 6, he converts on a beautiful play a couple weeks ago, I think, against Northwestern. So in the gotta have it moments, we've seen him do it. So just eliminate as many gotta have it moments as possible. Yeah. And with the run game is the engine that creates these opportunities for Penn State to be great. And if they do that, I think a lot of other things chunk into place.
Love it.
Yeah,
it's solved. They did it.
It has been did.
Hand it over to Mike Yursich, and let's get this thing going.
Yeah, it's a fun matchup, because I think that the strengths match up well, and these 2 opposing sides create a really even matchup that is going to be the battle of the game, because the offense and the defense on the other side, Marvin Harrison Jr. can just be a cheat code for that offense. But there is a much heavier lean on that line of scrimmage for Penn State to be the aggressor and to win more times than what you have here, which I think there's a lot of gray area for me with this offensive line and for Penn State. So that's the ball game, maybe, or I'm completely wrong.
I'm in. I'll be there. I'm looking forward to covering it. And yeah, it feels like we have been talking about this all week. Let's go. It's time to get this show on the road.
Absolutely. And we'll have, speaking of shows, all kinds of great shows coming up. Nate, give the people what you do during the game and what you provide over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, so they know where to go find Nate to hang out with him and watch the game with Nate.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you literally are watching the game with me. There are in-game threads that certain people avoid because they can be a little bit of a dust-up, and I don't mind being there to counterbalance that a little bit with some strong doses of reality in either direction. So yeah, they're during the game. Pre-game, obviously, the same thing. Pre-game is a great spot to be at Blue White
Yeah.
Illustrated, genuinely, just because we've got eyes on the field while everybody's warming up. Personnel news, lineups, right? What are the rotations for the receivers? All of that stuff that you want to have an idea for going into the game, while the TV coverage is Fox noon big kickoff, right? Like
Yep.
you're watching the pregame shows. We can give you all of that access from the press box at Ohio Stadium on Saturday and every week. So something to definitely think about and take advantage of our offer right now when we're doing 50% off. It's a great deal, truly.
Yeah. I learn stuff from these guys. When I'm sitting here in T. Frank's studio, getting ready for the game, I'm on the thread learning from Nate and from Greg and from Fitz when he's at the game. Is he going to the game this weekend?
He sure is.
All right. Well, that
doing
also
it.
sets up our post-game show where I'm going to be with you after the game, not riding solo because you are my co-host, you who is watching this show. So join us to see if T. Frank was right, see if all of these things that I had any bearing on the game whatsoever. We're going to have a pregame show 90 minutes before kickoff. That's 9 a.m. Eastern. We're going to be breaking down the game, giving you some more information about Penn State and Ohio State. Aeneas has some family issues he's got to deal with this weekend. Unfortunately, he's still going to be a part of the show, which is also a part of our Thursday because we're going to be doing some stuff pre-recorded with Aeneas, but I'll be bringing you even more T. Frank. If you didn't have enough today, there's a whole bunch more coming pre and post game on Saturday. So thanks to everybody for being here. Once again, Nate coming through clutch for me. This has been the craziest week. Of course, it's the most important week of the year so far from a numbers perspective of people and eyeballs, and everything from my equipment to my schedule for the week has blown up in my face. Nate coming through to save the day here on the Friday, so I appreciate him. Appreciate everybody who stuck with us through the week and who's going to be with us on the weekend. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. He's Nate Bauer. We will be back with more Penn State football. Talk to you then.